This week on the Baseline Podcast, we talk about the impact that Tom Brady had on the game of football, but more importantly, on the world of sports, and how the world of sports has forever changed because of Tom Brady, and we really could see that throughout this day and age of athletes. Then we talk about the transfer portal, and we talk about how the impact of what someone transferring can do on a program and for a head coach. And then we finally give our Super Bowl picks. As Browns fans, do we see the Bengals getting a first Super Bowl before the Browns? Or do we see OBJ get that Super Bowl that he's always wanted? That and so much more coming up on the Baseline Podcast. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Baseline Podcast here with Ben and Josh. We are back with another episode. I sound a little stuffed up. You might not be able to hear it, but I've been dealing with, the thing that is also a disease. It's called the flu, not COVID. So for all of you that are worried out there for me, I'm still living. But yeah, we're here. We're going to talk about some sports. It's a little football heavy this week, but I mean, it should be because it's like the week before like the biggest game of the year, which you'll hear one of us has a very interesting take on it. And well, I have a take on it too that some might think is interesting. But before we get into that, we're gonna start with a thing we started talking about last week. And Josh, go ahead and introduce us. What are we going to talk about when it comes to the Tom Brady?
Yeah, we had the speculation and maybe the premature report from Adam Schefter that Tom Brady was going to retire. And while it wasn't exactly accurate in news at the time that he hadn't retired, he did correctly predict in a way that what would happen. And Tom Brady did decide to retire. He decided that he wanted to spend more time off the field with his family and be more of a father and a husband, it sounded like, which is kind of like the stuff he was saying at the end of the regular season, stuff that he wants to take more advantage of. So it is kind of a shocker to me because Tom always talked about that he wanted to play till he was 50 or he would quit playing till he sucked. And I don't know if it was just taking too long for him to suck. And he just decided that, maybe I should just kill the career now. But based on the language after the regular season ended, hearing him talk about this stuff, it was kind of like he's basically said everything but I'm retiring. Like it kind of sounded like it was leading up to that. And now he's here. So the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as an organization are looking for a new quarterback now. We'll see if maybe they can snag one of these other old veteran types like Aaron Rodgers, or maybe they are comfortable with Kyle Trask, who's the backup quarterback in the building. Maybe they'll draft a guy if they don't think Kyle's that
trash. Kyle trash.
Hey, lay off my Florida Gators, man.
Sorry.
No, but the Buccaneers are definitely looking for a new quarterback now. But besides the Buccaneers, I mean, Tom had a huge impact, I think, in influencing some of this game's younger quarterbacks, a lot of fans, whether it was to hate him or to love him. Tom was that dude in the NFL, 7 Super Bowl rings, right?
Yeah, 7. Yeah, and I think Josh, I think you introed this really well, and I think we both can say maybe even our own lives, maybe not football wise, but I think the competitiveness and the attitude that Tom played with. This guy hated losing. And I think anybody, no matter what sport, whether it's track, whether it's basketball, baseball, whatever, you watched Tom Brady and you said, I wanted to be like that. I wanted to be the most competitive guy on the team. I wanted to be the best player that I could be. And Tom Brady showed that you don't have to be the fastest. You don't have to be the strongest. You don't have to look the prettiest, right? Like you just show up and you do your job. You wait for your turn. And look, Drew Bledsoe doesn't get hurt, right? We talk about this all the time. Drew Bledsoe doesn't get hurt. Who knows what happens? It's a whole new thing.
Maybe if the Tuck rule thing doesn't happen in that Raiders game, this run of 7 rings ain't even starting either.
Exactly. And that's the thing is like, and if the Browns don't fire Bill Belichick, who knows what happens?
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe Tim Couch is Tom Brady.
That is true. We never know. But yeah, I think his impact, and I want you to talk on this, Josh, is the impact, I think, is not just in football. I think a lot of times we think of athletes, they're impacting in just their sport. Would you say that probably between Tom and LeBron and Michael are probably the 3 guys that you can look at and say, wow, throughout every sport, this guy can influence in a mindset or a lifestyle in that sense?
Maybe, yeah, because when you look at the greatest in their sports and, just so that we don't offend anybody, I'll throw Tiger Woods into the mix, Serena Williams, and Michael Phelps, and some of these other like athletes that might be the greatest of all time in their sport and have also kind of achieved that because of the longevity in their career. They just, and you hit on Tom, like it wasn't necessarily the talent, right? Like he wasn't as fast as like a Lamar Jackson. He didn't have the accuracy of Drew Brees. He didn't have the arm strength of, say,
Mahomes.
I don't know, a Mahomes or a Brett Favre, or, he couldn't read a defense like Peyton Manning could. But I guarantee you, Tom probably did more work than all of them in the offseason to compensate for that in terms of film study and how he takes care of his body and the treatment that he gets from his trainer, Alex Guerrero. Like, they do a lot of different stuff that just nobody's doing. And the standard that Tom holds his receivers to, like Gronkowski and like Julian Edelman, and you can kind of see a little bit of that behind the scenes stuff in his documentary. I think it was Tom versus Time. Like, him and Edelman are like going at it at times, and it's not because they hate each other. Like, they're great friends, but they don't allow that. I guess they don't allow that relationship to be a buddy-buddy. It's an iron sharpens iron more kind of a thing, where Tom wants Edelman to live up to a higher standard of wanting to be like 100% precise on the way he runs routes and know when Tom's going to throw the ball in. The same way, like Edelman wants Tom to know when he's open on like a certain route and stuff like that. So, and then when you look at guys like MJ and you see the Last Dance doc, and you kind of see like some of that winner's mentality from MJ. And I'm sure if we did a documentary on like some of these other athletes you mentioned, we'd see a little bit of that as well. So, I mean, that's something that definitely separates, I think, Tom, not only from the rest of the NFL greats, but maybe the rest of all athletes, like in all sports, because I mean, 7 rings speaks for itself. Like, that's more than any franchise. Like the Pats and the Steelers, I believe, each have 6. And that was over a span of like, when did they start doing the Super Bowl? Like 60 years ago in the 60s. So it's like, and he won 7 in 22 years.
He won 7 more rings than the Browns have ever won.
And football is a team sport for sure. Like, it wasn't just Tom winning those, especially early on. Vinatieri's kicking game-winning field goals, and they have a studly linebacker crew of Mike
Ted
Vrabel,
Bruschi,
and Junior Seau, and they got Rodney Harrison at safety, and they got like
Randy Moss.
Randy. They actually never won a Super Bowl with Randy Moss.
That is true. They didn't.
Yeah,
but he had a freak year.
My point being, like, it wasn't just Tom. Maybe you could argue like later on when it was Tom and he was throwing to guys like just Julian Edelman. Like, no disrespect to Julian Edelman, I don't think he's a true wide receiver 1. He was still pulling off wins like that. And then when you get to Tampa Bay, a team that went to 7-9, a team that just like seemed to be like inconsistent. Like, Jameis Winston could throw for a lot of yards and a lot of touchdowns, but the turnovers and the interceptions were holding him back. And Tom goes over here. Obviously, all the turnover problems go away, but just Tom and attracting like a new culture and building a new culture. He gets Gronkowski to come over. He gets guys like Leonard Fournette that want to come over. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin become better. He brings Antonio Brown over, and like there's all these guys that want to play with Tom and be a part of that winning culture, because that's just how Tom works.
Yeah, and I think I remember hearing it was after I graduated from Cedarville. I went back for a chapel, and Tom Brady's quarterback coach in Tampa Bay, who also coached Peyton Manning in Indianapolis, was speaking. He's a Christian, was speaking at Cedarville. And he was saying that Tom's mentality is something that can never be matched. He said the way he thinks about the game, it's not just a game. It's like a lifestyle. It's like every moment is a defining moment for Tom. And I think that's what's just crazy to me, is that I think we look at LeBron, right? And we think LeBron, he's just, he's a freak athlete. You don't look at Tom Brady and go, wow, that dude's a freak athlete.
We all know that NFL Combine picture and the
exactly
and all that kind of stuff. That's what we think of Tom.
And I think that's what made him relate to every single kid growing up. He related to me. I was not the fastest. I definitely wasn't the most athletic, but I tried my hardest. And I think that's what made Tom relatable to everyone. I think that's why so many people hated him too, because he's a guy that came out of nowhere.
He's the guy that overcame his obstacles and maybe lack of talent in certain areas and did the work to get there, and they didn't. And I started off as a Tom hater too, Ben. Like, I didn't like seeing this dude get all this success and recognition. I mean, I kind of thought that, it wasn't just him. There's the other guys on the team that are winning these games for him or with him, however you want to look at it. It wasn't just him. You got the Spygate and the Deflategate and all that kind of stuff that, maybe you could argue that every team does stuff like that, but bottom line is, like, Patriots are the ones that are getting caught. So it's like,
it's hard. It's hard. Yeah.
Tom isn't without blemish at the same time, and this is kind of like maybe that touches into some of the steroid stuff we were talking about with like cheating
Yeah.
in baseball last week. Not exactly the same kind of cheating, obviously, but there was stuff that kind of went like that, and I think I let stuff like that kind of like cloud my judgment and ignore all the other stuff that Tom was doing to get to that point.
I mean, you look at his stats, and I looked at him a day or so ago as I was prepping for the show, and one of the things that was crazy to me was if you look at if you split his career up in 3 sections, every section he could probably make the Hall of Fame. If you look at every section of his
First
career,
8 years, his middle 8 years, and his last 8 years.
and yeah, you could either do that, yeah, and you look at those, and you're like, this dude's unreal. It's like he got better with age. He was like fine wine. You know, we always say that saying, but it truly was. And I think Tom Brady will go down as obviously to me, he's the greatest quarterback of all time. I mean, I don't think there's much debate. Maybe there is. But I think he's in the top 10 of most talented, maybe not talented, but most influential athletes of all time, for sure, in the world of sports. But with that, finish up about Tom Brady. We all love Tom Brady, but there is this new name that's out there in the world of sports here this week. It's a team that is existed. They used to be called the Washington, team. Now they're the football team. Now they are called the Washington Commanders. Yeah. I'm just going to let you ponder that for a second. Listen to that for a second. The Washington Commanders. Now, I will give my thoughts second, but Josh, you had a first thought, you said, and then you thought about it for a little bit more and got a little worried, or like more like
it was actually on first thought, like the Washington Commanders sounded super cool. You know, maybe you can tie it into Washington, D.C. and like commanding military, and maybe it's like patriotic in that kind of way, or just, I don't know, military names always sound cool. You know, the generals and commanders and things along those lines or something like that. And for like the first 5 minutes of seeing the name change, I'm like, very cool. But when you're scrolling through Twitter and you're seeing people's reactions, you're seeing people say that you can shorten commanders to commies. And then you see other takes like they really changed the Washington Redskins to the Washington people that killed the Redskins. And it's like, they had 2 years to think of this. And I only thought about this for 5 minutes, but maybe if I thought about it for 2 years, that thought or those thoughts would have crossed my mind at some point. But I mean, when you eliminate all that, like I love Commanders as itself, but maybe in this context, it's not the greatest one. It's at least funny a little bit to me.
I'll say this. It might be a little bit better than Guardians. I'll be 100% honest with you.
Yeah,
I like it a lot better than Guardians.
What the Indians have, they had a year to think. Maybe they should have taken 2 years. I don't know.
Goodness, the Cleveland Guardians. We'll get to that maybe in a second here, but going back to the Commanders here, I'm just going to say this. There was a name that I saw that was getting thrown around, the Red Hawks, and I also saw the Red Wolves. Like, I'm sorry, those two names right there, those are triple or double the time better than the Washington Commanders. Like, to me, it wasn't necessarily the name. It's like the jerseys were like, they bought it out of like Dick's Sporting Goods and then just put Commanders on them. Like, they weren't designed. They were just like, we're going to take the old colors and throw Commanders on. And for me, it's bigger than just the name. Obviously, like Josh and I could get really political, and we're not going to get super political, but it's the idea that, how far are we taking this? There are many other teams that have association or thoughts of association with historical things. But like we said last week, and it's, when do you cross the line of you are separating, you're trying to make politics into sports instead of taking sports and politics separate. And I think, Josh, I want you to touch on that. Like, what is your thoughts on that? Like, I feel like I understand maybe if there was very much verbiage, like I get it. Okay, you want to take the name away. But when have we crossed that line to where we're starting to separate what sports are and what they represent to now we're trying to make it all about what's the right thing and that sort of thing?
Yeah, I guess on like one point you can look at it and it's like, we got teams like the Kansas City Chiefs and Atlanta Braves, Florida State Seminoles, and like all these, I guess a lot of them had the initial intent of like paying tribute or paying heritage,
Yeah.
like so that we don't like forget these. Like, and then some people say that like taking these names out kind of like is wiping away, Native American history. And maybe that's true to an extent. I don't know. But if we're going to continue to cancel names, like then it's like, okay, can we have anything associated with Native American heritage whatsoever? Where it's like, would the Red Hawks have not gotten the okay either? Will the Kansas City Chiefs, because Chief is like a job title.
It is, yeah.
Kind of thing. And then it's like, if we get past Indians, are we just going to say any kind of name that did any kind of damage whatsoever? Like, let's take Vikings. Like, Vikings is a cool name, I think, but if you want to like dig into history, it's like Vikings were people that
They're
like pillaged and plundered, and, like took women and kidnapped and like killed and did all these bad things. And it's like, we could really drag this on. Like, that's the thing about like cancel culture, is like, how far are you going to take it? Because like how dumb you want to make it. Because we could really drag this on to the point where it's like we end up with football teams like I don't know,
the powder puffs
or the apples or the boxes or the the jerseys or something like that.
Yeah, and it is one of those weird things, and I think people though are kind of waking up to it, because you kind of hear these responses like, some people, even people that I know personally that were like for the change, are now like, why did we even change it? Like, realizing now that it didn't really hurt anybody. It hurt the people. Like, there was like, I believe Native Americans that came out and said like, this doesn't bother us. Like, this is giving us notice. This is giving us something that we can use. And
well, the context too is like, let's just say if the Cleveland Browns changed their name to the Cleveland Commanders, it's a different context. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like the Commanders wiped out like Brown's existence. Like, Brown is named after Paul Brown. And I know like we kind of play off of like the little brownie elf sometimes, but it was named after, the owner or the coach of the team, Paul Brown. So if it was a name change like that, where like, it was just like, okay, we're going to like get rid of this nickname that has to do with like a dude's that used to coach, and we're gonna like actually come up with a cool team name, and we're gonna be the Cleveland Commanders. That sounds dope.
Yeah,
but
it does.
I don't know any Cleveland Indians fans that are happy about their name change. I'd have to talk to some fans of the football team or the Redskins or the Commanders now, like if they are a fan of this change, because I think it's just more of like this context is what makes it look more bad than what it is. Because standing alone, like the Commanders, I love it.
Yeah, and I think again, I think there's so much into this that is not like, I thought this was for the fans, and I feel like so much of this is not about the fans. It's like people that never watched football are now putting their voices into this, and it's like, there's history to these things. Like, the Washington Redskins were around forever. The Cleveland Indians have been around for so long, and I get it. There can be connotations, but there's connotations with everything. You could take things from anything and make it into this big political thing. And I just worry that our sports are getting ripped away from us because you have people that are, I hate to say, sticking their heads where they don't belong, but there's times where I think that like, are we getting are the right people the ones making these decisions, or are they just becoming this political powerhead that they want to make a statement? I don't want sports to become a statement piece. I want sports to become, something that's different. And I think that's what makes the NBA less watched than ever right now, is because people don't want to watch this kind of stuff. I really don't think so.
Maybe eventually one day, Ben, we'll get a team nickname called the Activists.
How about the LA Activists? That sounds like a great team name. No reason at all for saying
Put
that.
In LA, like one of the most activist like filled cities.
New York, the New York Stock Exchange. That'll be a new team name. So we talked about that. I know that wasn't a long talk about that, but I think we both covered the basis. Now before we go on to the next topic, Josh, what would you rate that name? The name and the jersey. So we'll go name first, then jerseys. What would you rate the name out of 10, and then the jerseys out of 10?
Yeah, I'm gonna judge the name like as a standalone, just because I don't want to.
Of course, yes.
Just political. I don't want it to be political. But I like Washington Commanders, like standing alone. Like I'm gonna give it like a 7 out of 10. I like.
Okay.
It's not like anything super awesome. Like, I think there are cooler names in the league, but I think this one like is cool enough. I love it as a standalone, so we'll give it a 7.
Yeah, I would have to give. I think I'll give it about. I think I'll give about a 5. I just think it doesn't have the quite ring to it. Like, I like some names to be like Washington Commanders. Like, I feel like they're just missing that They're just that little ring. Like the Washington Red Wolves just sounds like dope. Like when
Some
you
of them
say it
pop
all
a little
once.
bit more,
Yeah. So I would give it that. And then the jerseys are just hideous. I'd give it a 1. It might not even, doesn't even deserve a 1, but I'm just going to give it at least for trying. They're just crap. That's all I want to say.
I'm not as negative. Like, it depends on which jersey, because like there were 3 of them that I saw modeled, and I thought like maybe I'll give the collective package like a 4 or a 5.
You're gracious. You're gracious, Josh. You're gracious.
I don't have to buy one though. Like, it's not my team, so maybe
I'll be honest. The Steelers Bumblebee jerseys were better than those. Oh. The Steelers Bumblebee jerseys were better than them. I'm just saying.
I wouldn't wear either one of them.
That is true. That is true. So we're going to move on to we're going to take a step back from the NFL just for a little brief moment, and we're going to talk about guess what? The transfer portal. Don't we love the transfer portal? We're going to be talking about a big move.
News from the transfer portal.
Yes, that could really shift the power of college football next year and the next couple years. So, Josh, we're talking about Caleb Williams. If you didn't know, he transferred from Oklahoma to USC. Also, Spencer Rattler transferred from Oklahoma, so it's kind of funny there because now they have Gabriel, but still, it's just funny to me. And then we'll talk about Riley's talk about the transfer portal in a second too. But Josh, I want to hear your first thoughts about this news.
So initially, when I heard that Caleb Williams was going to the transfer portal, I want to say I knew that he was going to USC, and it only made sense for him to join Lincoln Riley. But I let a lot of other people's speculation and these other smoke screens and like SEC NIL deals. And I know what Wisconsin got in the mix a little bit because they have Caleb Williams, top target from high school, on the team. And they signed Bobby Ingram from the NFL. I believe he was with the Ravens. But he's a family friend, and he's the offensive coordinator now at Wisconsin. So it was like, that's a familiar face, somebody from the NFL. And Caleb's dad has also spoken that it's not just about the most potential to make money, but also the most potential to become an NFL quarterback. So it's like, okay, familiar face, family friend, dude that's been in the NFL.
Wisconsin, that would have been crazy. If he would have went to Wisconsin, I would have been like, what?
Well, it wouldn't be the first time Wisconsin landed a top
Russell Wilson,
because they did get Russell Wilson. Yeah. So I didn't want to definitively say Wisconsin, but it did cloud my initial prediction of USC, because then it was just like, instead of it being USC end all be all, it became, well, it could be USC, it could be Georgia, it could be Wisconsin. So, and then he ends up going to USC, and it's like, duh, Josh, like, he's going to join Lincoln. Like, that's the dude that recruited him. That's the guy that is putting all these quarterbacks in the NFL and making them like top draft picks. Like, we've seen him do it with Jalen Hurts and Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield. Those guys are all transfers, though. So now he has to show that he can do it with a real dude. And Spencer Rattler obviously wasn't that dude, but perhaps Caleb Williams is that dude. And a big reason why Caleb probably went to Oklahoma is because of Lincoln Riley. So the fact that Lincoln goes to USC and Caleb enters the transfer portal and decides to land at USC, that makes, it makes the most sense at the end of the day. Like, this move shouldn't have surprised me, and I guess it doesn't, but I did let some other things distract me from seeing that this was going to happen.
Yeah, and my biggest first initial thoughts, right, is I wasn't surprised, to be honest. I heard like SEC and stuff. I'm like, why would he go anywhere else? He knows the offense. And Lincoln's sitting there going, yes, please. Then I don't have to teach a new quarterback. All I got to do is bring my quarterback in and say, hey, this is the offense. You know how to do it. I'm more interested to see how much this shifts the power back to the Pac-12. Let's be honest. The Pac-12 hasn't been relevant in college football since Oregon played Ohio State in the national title. If you really think about it, that was the last time.
They did get another playoff team from Washington to get there, but they got blasted, and then that was like the last time that were.
But even if you look at that game, you really have to go back till the USC days to really see where the Pac-12 was like the conference outside the SEC or the Big Ten to actually compete
Yeah.
at a high level.
And
That's
Oregon
probably
had
the last
made
time.
Oregon didn't make the national title the year that Cam Newton and Auburn won it. So
True.
they were making titles. Stanford with Andrew Luck had a run there. So like the Pac-12 wasn't really a joke for one point there.
Yeah, that's the thing
outside
is
of just
like
USC.
so that's why I'm really interested to see, Oregon gets a new head coach. We'll see how that works out. My thing is that is this just going to be like an ACC where you have one team that's just going to run it for the next 10 years? Or are you going to see it? Because I think everyone says it's SEC, Big Ten. Those are the two best football, conferences in college football. It's not even close. The question is, will you see a USC be competitive against an Oregon or Washington, or do you see Lincoln Riley going in there and going, all right, we're going to dominate this? I'm interested to see what happens. What are your thoughts? Do you think this is going to be a one-team race for the next 10 years, or will this be a competitive conference once again?
It very well could be just the one team. And you brought up Clemson. I mean, Clemson's been running the ACC until, I guess, this season. But a move like this, like Oregon's kind of been like scratching at the door of winning the Pac-12 and like still being that team to like come out of there and be relevant. But then they like have a choke job against a team like Utah, which, I mean, Utah's not a bad team, but Utah is also not like a national contender either. Like, so maybe this is the first step to the Pac-12 coming back, because they've just been lacking a team. And then maybe if Lincoln can bring USC back, maybe it'll drive another coach, or maybe it'll drive an Oregon to like break out the checkbook even more than they have to like get
or even a Utah to step it up.
Yeah, like maybe it inspires other teams, because it's like, okay, we can't just like skid on by now and finish first or second in the conference. Like maybe they should have been trying to like be better for the sake of being a playoff team before this. But now that you got like a real contender, like I think Lincoln and Caleb and all the moves that Lincoln's made, bringing all these assistant coaches in and flipping some recruits and bringing some more transfers in. I mean, USC's got to be like a preseason top 10 team now.
Well, yeah, I mean, you even look at around the Pac-12. I mean, Arizona State is going through, if you watch the news, they're going through turmoil right now with Herm Edwards.
They look like they were on the right track there.
Exactly. Arizona is trash. Sorry. They just are. They're terrible.
UCLA might not be able to keep this up either. They were a team that looked like they could be something special, or maybe this was a stepping stone season for Chip
But it's sad when you're in LA and Ohio State comes in and swaps a coach away from you. That just shows you that, let's see, do I want LA and sunshine, or do I want to go to a place that wins? It just shows you. And I think, UCLA's, I mean, they're sort of there, not really. You look at Colorado, they've kind of been just nowhere really.
Arizona,
same thing. And you look at Washington, they're kind of on a down spell. Washington State
hasn't been even interesting like as a bad team since Mike Leach left.
So this is my thing. I think you're going to see a USC that will be like the Pete Carroll USC teams that will win 4, 5, 6 straight things until Lincoln Riley gets bored, and then he'll move to the NFL and coach some team. I mean, that's what's going to happen. It's just a reality. The difference between him and Ryan Day is, I believe, because they compare a lot of those two guys to each other, Ryan Day and Lincoln Riley. And I've said this is the difference between the two. Ryan Day is more of a loyal guy. He thinks of what's best for at the moment and what's going to help him in the long run. I think Lincoln Riley, to me, and a lot of people think he was a little scared of the fact that he's going to the SEC.
He didn't like the move either, is what
exactly.
The rumor was. Like they didn't ask for his input whatsoever, and I would hate that too, because going to the SEC doesn't really make much sense for Oklahoma. Like it doesn't. I don't know if that's going to help them.
But a lot of people have been saying though, is if you want to be the best coach, why not coach in the best conference? And I think that's what that whole mentality is why go to Pac-12? That's like the one place you shouldn't go to if you really want to be considered a top coach.
But I think you're going to get a lot more chances at national championship if you are coming out of a conference as the only team.
Yes, that is true too.
I think like if you take Texas A&M out of the SEC, I think they can be competitive in the ACC or the Big 12 if they still stay there, or the Pac-12 if they would have moved there. But I think he's looking at Jimbo Fisher, and it's like, man, they got something good going here, but they haven't been able to overcome that Alabama or that LSU or whoever it is, just because of how strong the conference is. That
I mean,
division is.
speaking of Texas A&M, I mean, look at did you see the recruiting class? Oh my word!
Maybe they're on their way to being that team with
Now,
this
according
NIL
to
money.
according to Texas A&M, they said they have no slush fund, which I don't believe for 1 ounce. You're at Texas A&M in the middle of
Yeah.
Texas. I don't believe that for 1 minute.
It's been pretty widely reported too that they shelled out $30 million.
And he also blamed, like, it was he said something about Ohio State. And I'm like, Ohio State hasn't lied the fact that they've spent some money. Like, they're honest about it.
Well, the thing
like,
now is, like, it's legal to do this. Like, Texas is even being open about the offensive lineman slush fund kind of thing they got going on, and they're acting like they have something to hide.
It's like what
maybe they do have something to hide. Maybe they did do this shady.
Well,
maybe they didn't follow all the NIL rules.
But I think some of the coaches have made a big point of, like, okay, if you're really defensive about it, there's something else more than just
because on paper everything he did was by the book, legal.
Yep.
Like you're giving recruits like NIL money from a slush fund. That's by the book, legal.
Which is just funny to hear that, because it's just like slush fund. It just sounds like something so dirty. It's like, they're getting the money out of the pockets of the old ladies. But speaking of transfer portal, we didn't really speak of it, but Lincoln Riley had something very interesting to say. I want to hear your thoughts on this. He said, and I quote, this is just a brief excerpt of it. It says, "I think at some point we'll have to put in some guardrails. I think it's difficult for players, difficult for coaches, difficult to build rosters." And I just laugh because he's the one that just uses it so brilliantly all the time. And I'm like, he's got a point, because Ryan Day has said something similar to this too.
I think Nick Saban has as well.
But the difference between Nick Saban and Ryan Day is I feel like they don't go after transfers like Lincoln Riley does. Lincoln Riley loves transfers. If you look at his last few years of some big name guys, like Ohio State
quarterbacks.
Yeah, and you think of Ohio State, yes, they got Trey Sermon. They've gotten a few guys, but they don't go out and get, like, USC this year has about like 8 transfers coming in. They're going to be key players. And so I do agree with Lincoln Riley. There needs to be guardrails. There needs to be a say, hey, you have to stay 2 years at a university, and then you can do whatever you want to do. Because then that says, hey, put the time in to see if you're actually worth it instead of wasting your time. And that's my thoughts. I don't know about your thoughts.
The way that I mean, there is a little bit of irony here, right? Because Lincoln, like, totally used the rules to his advantage, I guess. He pillaged Oklahoma and left them in shambles, kind of.
Which I always think morally is just stupid. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Like, that's just, it's kind of messed up.
I heard that quote as well. And the way that I took it as is, like, I mean, I think he can hold that opinion. Like, there needs to be a little bit more regulations here. But until there are, I'm going to continue to use them to my advantage and show you guys, like, this is the rules you want to go by. Okay, watch what I do to the NCAA. Look at how I dominate the college football landscape. Still don't want to change the rules? Okay, I'll take more kids from this class and I'll get more transfers from here, and I'll continue to build this empire at USC until you guys do something about it and try to even the playing field out.
Yeah. And I think that's what, like, it's a reality, and I think it will change at some point. I was thinking about I looked at the recruiting classes, right? Ohio State had another top 5 class, I think. Alabama had a top class. I think there were 2. Texas A&M was 1. Georgia was 3, I believe. I don't know who was 4. Can't remember who his 4 was. Ohio State might have been 4. Let me look at that. Top recruiting classes. But the thing is, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, Josh. Do you think transfers will be more valuable to some coaches than the recruits coming into that certain year? Do you feel like they're going to get to a point, if they don't stop this now, where coaches will spend more time looking at transfers than they will guys that need to develop?
It depends. Like you mentioned, some of these teams like Alabama and Ohio State, they're taking transfers when they need them. But then there's also teams like Ole Miss that I think got like 20-something transfers coming in. And it's like, did they even like try to go out and get like new kids? Or is this like opening the door maybe for, like, I guess the smaller and not that Ole Miss is small, they're still SEC, but like in the whole college football landscape, they're not like a competitive team. So maybe this is a chance for Ole Miss while they can't recruit like the 5 stars. Maybe they can get the 4 and 5 stars that want to start as freshmen, go to a team like Alabama or Ohio State or Oklahoma or whatever power, and they don't get to start because reality hits them. And it's like, shoot, I'm not going to get to start here till my junior year, like most college football players. Whereas they can go to Ole Miss and Ole Miss can be like, hey, we actually couldn't even recruit any 5 stars to come here because that's how much we suck. What if you come over here and you'll play immediately because we literally have nobody better.
And we'll pay you. And we'll pay you.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's going to hinder any development. I just think it's going to end up being like the schools that can't recruit the 4 and 5 stars consistently every year are going to take advantage of this avenue and maybe take some players from, more of the powers like Ohio State and Alabama. And maybe it's going to make Ohio State and Alabama's life harder in recruiting down the road because they're not going to be able to keep all those like 30 whatever something kids that they recruit every year on the team. They're going to have to bring in more kids in bigger classes, but I don't know that that'll hinder development on anybody by
and if you look at the top 10 class rankings here, I want you to tell me if you hear any surprises in here. Number 1, Texas A&M. 2 Alabama. 3 Georgia, 4 Ohio State, 5 Texas. That's a little bit of a shocker as Texas been kind of lower. 6 Penn State.
Ooh.
Interesting. 7 Notre Dame. Oklahoma was at 8. That's with losing their head coach, I think is impressive. But they had no 5 stars come in. Not a shocker. Michigan is at 9, which Michigan's just a mess.
It's a little
right
high
now
for Michigan, but they're coming off one of the best seasons they've had in a while.
Yes.
So it makes sense they'd have a jump.
But speaking of Michigan real quick, have you heard of kind of the craziness going on with Michigan right now, which is just fun for an Ohio State fan?
I did hear that Harbaugh kind of low-key got rejected and then tried to flip the script that he didn't get rejected by Minnesota, but decided to come back to Michigan. And I think I heard Josh Gaddis is the new job.
He came out and said, if uncertainty, and obviously they don't believe in trust in me or believe in me or something like that. And I just I had to send that out to every friend that I had. And I'm like, and yet Michigan wins against Ohio State and they still can't figure it out. That's just what makes it so good.
Think about this from Josh Gaddis, though. He was the co-OC at Alabama, which we'd say pretty cool assistant job. Everybody would love that. He demotes himself to OC at Michigan and then further demotes himself to OC at Miami. What's going on here?
The fact is,
because he's not getting fired from these gigs, right?
No.
He's choosing to leave and go to
The thing is, Miami job, they said that's been out there for almost 2 months and no one's wanted the OC job under Cristobal, which makes me go, why?
That's interesting, man, because Cristobal hasn't had terrible offense, right? I mean, he had Justin Herbert and Penei Sewell come through.
And by the way, the number 10 team is going to shock you. Not Clemson. North Carolina was at number 10 this year.
North Carolina's been making some bumps, though. Mac Brown has,
dude, the Mac Daddy.
Taking them, at least in recruiting, to that next level. Obviously, we're going to have to see that continue to stay consistent on the field, but he's been making, some mad progress in recruiting.
Just so you know, Texas A&M, 7 5 stars and 19 4 stars.
Yeah, okay. Texas A&M, hasn't recruited 7 5 stars in Jimbo Fisher's combined, I think, 4 years he's been at A&M. And they aren't coming off of a winning season where they made the playoffs that would jump that progress. They went 4-4 in the SEC last year, and they just expect that since Texas A&M is just a fine and dandy school that produces straight A students and produces Heisman Trophy winners and national champions, that everybody just wants to come and play over there. There's a $30 million fund there somewhere that's playing a factor into this.
The Browns got to thank Texas A&M. I mean, we got one of the best pass rushers in football right now, so because of Texas A&M. So,
and we got one of the best quarterbacks ever too, right? Johnny Manziel.
Oh, geez. So Texas A&M, their score was 330.51. Alabama 322.15. Georgia 316. Ohio State 300. The next closest team was at 288, which was Texas.
Wow.
Just shows you where the power is. in college football.
Those three have been killing the recruiting, though. Bama, Georgia, Ohio State. Like, those are, like, have been consistently top 5, I want to say, for a while
Yeah.
now.
And so I think that just shows you the power of what, goes on in college football. And again, I think we could spend hours on the transfer portal, hours on recruiting, which we will throughout the spring here as spring games happen and things happen. As draft time comes around, we'll have our mock drafts and everything. But yeah, so moving on to kind of our last thing we want to talk about, to what everyone has been waiting and just wondering, what is the Browns fans going to choose when it comes to a debate between the Cincinnati Bengals and the LA Rams with OBJ, the disgraced Browns member? What are they going to choose? And so, Josh, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna sit on mine, and I want you to just explain your your theory that you had before we started. You said you will die on that poll.
Yeah, I'm not really I don't think I'm rooting for anybody. I don't see any upside in rooting for a divisional rival within the state to get a Super Bowl before you and complete their rebuild and trip to greatness faster than the Browns did. I'm not really a fan of that option. And I'm also not a fan of rooting for the guy that not single-handedly dismantled our regular season, but played a big part of it, turned away potential free agents from coming here, made Baker Mayfield's life hell, and tried to put all the blame on him for running rogue routes and not doing his job, basically. None of those options seem good to me. So what I am rooting for is something wild to happen that leads to a player strike and no Super Bowl. Just like there was no World Series in 1994, players go on strike. I'm rooting for there to be no Super Bowl in 2022. Now, maybe that is blasphemous to say as a football fan, but I don't see any upside in any of this.
No,
The Browns
this
fans
is
are
what this
taking an
is.
L one way or another.
Listen, this is what you see for all of you Europeans that are watching, and for all of you non-Browns fans. If you want to know what a Browns fan's like, this is the Browns fan right here. This is, you've been through so much pain as a fan to see people that have either been a part of your team or a team that you hate win a Super Bowl
without you.
It just hurts. Especially after last year. Like Josh can attest, last year was probably one of the biggest moments for us as Browns fans. And then to this year to be just crap. It's been an emotional roller coaster. And I'll share my thoughts here. And I'm about to shock a lot of people when I say this. These are my predictions. And we'll get to your scores here in a second, Josh. But I know you won't really care. But this is my thing. I have been against the Bengals this whole playoffs. Josh, you know this. I have picked against them every step of the way, having said they're going to win. My brother let me have it. But Jared, listen very carefully right now. I want you to know that this is surreal. I love you. And I swear, if they do win, I don't want to hear this for the next 364 days. I know you will anyways, because you won't care what I say. But I have the Bengals winning the Super Bowl. Oh my goodness, I can't believe I said that. Josh, I think I about
You're
lost.
not only rooting for them, you think they'll win the game.
I'm not rooting for them, okay? Listen. No. I'm not rooting. Okay, there's a difference. I am making an educated guess that they will win based off a hypothesis that I made in my head. All right?
Okay.
So Bengals will win, I think, based on what I've thought in my head. 28-21. My biggest thing is, and I think part of the hate comes in, I shouldn't hate, but part of it comes in, and that's because OBJ's on the Rams. That literally might be the only reason I give any edge to the Bengals. Like I don't know why. I can't root for OBJ the way he just did us, the way he did. But again, it's hard for me because I don't like the Bengals. I don't want to see them win a Super Bowl, but I'm not going to root for everyone. And to be honest with you, I'll probably go to bed because it's going to be really late here, like midnight before it even comes on. And if it was the Browns, I'd stay up. But I'm like, I don't really care. Like, I'll just wake up and I might text Josh and be like, Josh, tell me what happens and let me know what we have to talk about next week. But yeah, so that's my pick. I think the difference will be, if Burrow can if Burrow and Chase can get connections and they can protect Burrow enough, I think that could be the difference. I think the Bengals defense will do enough, but I think there's just something about Burrow and the way he's playing this year. Who knows what's going to be like, but that's my prediction. 28-21 Cincinnati. If you had a prediction, Josh, of a score, what would your score prediction be?
Well, assuming this game does happen, I would probably give the edge to the Rams. And this is why I would go Rams. They've been playing against some big-time offenses this postseason already. They had to go against the Cardinals wild card weekend and put up 34 on them, held them to 11. They had to beat the Bucs. They ended Tom Brady's career effectively, 30-27 over there. Now the 49ers, I thought the 49ers were going to win this game, and this was going to be the end of the Rams run. And I was hoping it was going to be the end of the Rams run. That way I could have a team to root for in the Super Bowl so that I could also root for a Super Bowl to happen. But 49ers couldn't get it done late, and Rams win that one 20-17. But they've been playing they've beaten some pretty good offenses already. So the fact that the Bengals offense has been doing what it's been doing isn't as big of a concern to me, other than the fact that Joe Burrow, and we've seen it time and time again, is that he's really kind of tough to defend because if you give him all day long to throw, he'll find somebody open. But if you pressure him, he will find someone like even faster. Like we've never seen a quarterback thrive under pressure like that, especially a dude this young. Like I think
the fact that he also tore his ACL like just over really was about a year and a half ago is when he tore his ACL too, which is crazy to me.
I think the big matchup that you're gonna have to find watching this one is the Jalen Ramsey, Jamar Chase one.
Yeah.
Assuming that is who Ramsey lines up on. I think that knowing Jalen and how big of an ego he has and how much pride he takes in shutting down every team's best receiver, that he's going to want that matchup and demand it and do everything he can to make Jamar's life hell. Whether Jamar will succeed or not, like I know the Browns had success in shutting him down and a couple other teams did as well, because obviously those 200-yard games he had to balance out at some point. So he had some 30-yard games maybe thrown in there. But he's a rookie. He's still learning. He's going to be a dog in this league, but there are ways to stop him. And I think the Rams have the defensive personnel to do that because they don't just have Ramsey. You know, they got Von Miller and they got Aaron Donald that will bring pressure. But again, Burrow, seems to thrive under pressure. So.
But I think, though, the difference, and I think what the Browns did, not much the second game against the Bengals because Burrow didn't play, but the first game is they really disguised what they do. Denzel Ward, I think he played in that game. Was it Denzel Ward? It might have been him or Hill. They would play close to Chase, let him get out, and they would go to zone. They would look like they're matching man up, go zone. They look like they're going to go zone. Ward would run up and do man-to-man. And it made it hard for Boyd. It made it hard for all these guys to get going. And I think that's what the Rams have to do. Jalen Ramsey is going to have to be the GOAT he says he is. You know, he's the new age of Richard Sherman. That's literally what he is. He's the younger version of Richard Sherman. And I think Jalen Ramsey, if he stops Chase and they could slow down Burrow, the Rams could win this by 25. I'm not kidding you when I say that. I think
at the very least, defensive edge has to go to the Rams, right?
Yes, 100%. Yes. I think offensively, it's a tie. I think it's a draw because I think both teams are weak in some areas. I think some teams, they're strong in some areas. I think the difference could be, and I hate to say this because it sounds like an old coach, special teams. Who makes the difference, right? Supposedly OBJ has been taking punt returns for which we all see. Never mind. I just don't even want to talk about him. But I look at this game and I say, if the Bengals put up 20 plus points, I think they have a chance to win. If the Bengals are held under 20 points, there's no chance because I think this Rams offense is too talented. They don't really run the ball that well, that great. But they have Cooper Kupp, and all they got to do is just get him the ball. And the last time he played the Bengals 2 years ago, he had 200 yards. So just saying, it's going to be a crazy game, a wild game. Who would you say before we finish up? Who would you say is your X factor on the offensive side of the ball for the Bengals and the Rams, and on the defensive side of the ball for the Bengals and the Rams?
Well, I think X factor on the offense has to be Chase because if he's getting open and getting in rhythm, that means that Joe is finding him and also staying in rhythm. That also means that the defense is going to pay more attention to Chase. But as soon as you do that, then that's going to open the door for guys like T. Higgins to come out and make some plays too. So I'm going to say Chase X factor on Bengals offense. And then kind of right along with that, I think X factor on Rams defense is Ramsey. We already talked about that matchup. I think that's where it's all going to start and finish. I think Aaron Donald and Von Miller will do their thing regardless, just because the Bengals offensive line, as we know, has been a weakness. And I don't think that those guys will have too much trouble creating pressure like they usually do every week. But I think it's going to come down to that Ramsey-Chase matchup. X factor, both sides offensively and defensively.
Yeah. I think, I'm going to kind of I think I'm going to do both. I think for the Bengals, I think the X factor is the offensive line. I know that's not one person, but I think if
the unit collectively, though, that makes sense.
if they make a stop, right? Like I think if they can keep it to one sack or less in the game, I think that the Bengals have a really good shot. I think also you look at on the defensive side of the ball so I think on the offensive side of the ball I'm going to also go to the Rams X factor as well on the offensive side. I think the Rams X factor on the opposite side of the ball is Matthew Stafford. Does Matthew Stafford play like the playoff quarterback we've seen this year, or does he play like the Detroit Lion quarterback that struggled at times?
Yeah.
If you get him the right place, they can win this game. Defensive side of the ball for the Bengals, I'm going to have to go with my Ohio State man, Hubbard. I think if you can get Hubbard, I think if you can get Hendrickson, I think that's his name, the other defensive end. And I think if you can get, some of these cornerbacks for really just the edge rushers of the Bengals and the corners of the Bengals are kind of like my X factors for them. If they can do a decent job, they can stay with it. It's important. And then for the Rams, I'm actually going to shock you here. I'm going to go the linebacker core for the Rams. I think it's the one thing that they don't really talk about with them. I think if they can maintain the run and also keep people in front of them, keep Burrow in front of them, I think that could be a big difference maker for the Rams and for the Bengals. And so, Josh, what do you think? Do you think commercials will be a top 10 this year, or do you think we're going to be seeing a weaker set of commercials this year?
Dude, I think they've been getting worse, honestly, as the Super Bowls have gone on. There's been like fewer and fewer that stand out, and just the reason that we even talk about them, I feel like, is just because of how dumb they were, like not because of how funny or cool they were.
Yeah. What would you would you say though, it was back when we were probably what? I don't know. I was probably what, 13, 14 when the commercials were really good, like back in the late 2009, 2010. That was when they were really good.
Super Bowl it was, but
the Doritos commercials. Oh,
Doritos had some really good ones. Like, do you remember the one with the kid that like slaps that one guy in the face and like, keep your hands off my mama, keep your hands off my Doritos? I feel like that was the peak of Super Bowl commercials. Like that Super Bowl, like there were so many good ads, and
like
that was the last time that I feel like it was stacked with good ads.
The monkey and the baby monkey.
That was weird,
that?
Dude.
That was just
like,
a weird.
We were talking about that because of how weird that was.
Dude, that was just good though. Baby monkey. Sorry. So that is today's episode. But before we go, Josh, we talked about just weird names of sports teams, right? And I was thinking this week as I was sick and laying here in my bed and like dying, I thought of flu, because you obviously know, COVID's so much more deadlier than the flu. Just going to leave that there. As I was thinking, I was like, what's a question I can ask him that would make it interesting and kind of think? So, Josh, you could take a favorite team of yours or something or whatever, any team in the NFL. So the Browns, or you could take someone else. And if you could change their name, what would you change that to and why? So if you could take a team that you either the Browns or a team that you're just like, they just need to change their name. Why would you change it? Or what would it change to and why?
Well, let me run through all the names here real quick in my head, so they're all out there, and I'll tell you which ones I think are dumb, and then we'll go from there. So I think and I don't remember the names of all divisions, but Pats, Dolphins, Jets, and Bills, I think those guys are all good to go. Yep, they're safe. Chiefs, Chargers, Raiders, and Broncos, I think, are all safe.
Yep, I agree.
Colts, Jaguars, Texans, Titans, those guys are all safe, I'd say.
Yeah.
I'm actually a big fan of the Titans. That's one of my favorite names.
No, I like that one. It's not that one I was thinking of.
Yeah. And then in our division with the Browns, Steelers, Ravens, Bengals, I mean,
I like it.
Think about it. Browns is a terrible name, but
It
we
is.
root for it, and we don't let anyone hate it because it's our
Awful.
team name.
I hate the name.
I don't think that we would be that way if we were outside of Cleveland. So we will go with that's all the teams in the AFC. So the Browns is in the Super Bowl of worst names for the AFC, and then let's see if we can come up with an NFC representative now.
So NFC, you got the Seahawks, Cardinals,
Seahawks, Cardinals, Rams, 49ers.
49ers. I think those are all good.
I mean, I think names like 49ers, 76ers, and like stuff like that are kind of odd, but it's like
it makes sense for the history.
And the Gold Rush, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I like team names that tie in the location too. Like if they actually have something to do with that city that they're from, and it's not just kind of randomized, I put more respect on it. So
yeah. So then you have the NFC South, which is the Falcons, Buccaneers, Panthers, Saints. There's one in there that I don't really like, but you probably figure out which one I don't like.
Is it the Saints?
It's actually not the Saints, believe it or not. It's the Falcons. I never really liked the Falcons.
Really?
Yeah, maybe it was like
not intimidating, or what is it for you?
I don't know. I feel like the Saints kind of makes sense if you know the New Orleans vibe of and then the Buccaneers make sense kind of out in the water. The Panthers, that's just kind of a cool like cat name. Mm-hmm. But then you have the Falcons. It doesn't really in your head really, can't really. But that's mine. It doesn't have to be. I'm just saying.
Sure. Then we got Eagles, Giants, Cowboys, Commanders.
I think we all can just mark down what we want for the NFC. Well, we also forgot the Vikings, Packers, Bears.
Packers, Lions, Bears.
Yeah. The Lions are fine. I actually don't. I mean, they just suck, but that's besides the point.
Suck. Yeah, changing the team name.
So I would say the Browns and the Commanders then. So what would you change?
What
would you change the names to?
I will say, though, I think the Packers name is kind of lame, too.
But it's packing cheese.
That's what it's about?
So, there's something about that. I don't remember exactly.
Okay, I thought they just went with the cheese because Wisconsin, and I didn't know that had anything to do with...
I don't know. It was something with packing. That's all I remember. I don't remember what it was.
Yeah, obviously packing. Packers pack, but it's like...
But I would say, though, we can't put the Commanders above. Like, you can't put the Packers worse than the Commanders. It's just bad.
I have a harder time putting the Commanders in that because, like, if they weren't replacing,
the Redskins,
it wouldn't be as big of a problem. But if Packers has something to do with like Green Bay, and
let's look it up. Let me look this up. So while you're thinking of a name for the Browns, let me put up.
Yeah, because I think that's what we can agree on.
Does the Packers name come from? Here we go. The company gave its name to the Green Bay Packers. The football team took its name after Curly Lambeau, a shipping clerk for the company, successfully asked the company's owner, Frank Peck, for money for jerseys and use of company's athletic field in 1919. That is the lamest. That is so lame.
So it's just like a guy had a company called Packers?
I guess.
Okay.
Gosh.
While the company may have been in Green Bay, that is kind of a lame
reason,
because it could have been any company.
Hold up. I got to read this. Is this actually right?
No, yeah, it almost sounds like fake. I don't.
No. What's weird about this is the place. Okay, this is. I hope I don't get taken down for this. The place is called the Indian Packing Company.
The Indian Packing Company.
I'm not kidding. And it was like there was places throughout the U.S. There's some in Rhode Island, Indiana, DuPont, Indiana, Greenwood, Indiana, Providence, and then Green Bay, Wisconsin.
Okay. Well, at the very least, the NFC Championship of worst names is Commanders and Packers.
I would say that let's go with the Packers.
The Falcons you weren't so high on either, so they're winning their division too.
I would say, though, the Packers will probably go. After reading that story, I think they deserve to be reconsidered. Yeah. I have family that will listen to this that like the Packers, but I don't care.
Let's walk through the Cleveland one first because that was one that we definitively agreed on in the AFC.
We're Browns fans.
Yeah. What's Cleveland known for, Ben? Because they had a chance to come up with a team name for the Cleveland Indians and botched that incredibly. But
I would say the hard work. There's a lot of hard work of I know Cleveland's known for, what is it called? I can't remember off the top of my head. Cleveland is known.
Because when they were thinking of
the rock and roll, though. I mean, they're known for the rock and roll
hall there. Yeah, I don't know if you can.
The Cleveland Rockers.
I don't know if you can come up with rockers. I think you got to come up with like a different kind of jargon in rock and roll. Like I don't know if that means like, and this is just me spitballing, like the shreds or the slashes, or trying to think of like other.
I mean, it's known for a lot of its known as the Forest City because there's so many trees in Cleveland. Forest City.
Foresters.
The Forester. No.
When they were talking Cleveland Indians names, I wanted to go with like Lakers because
that's what I was.
But I think the Los Angeles Lakers own that name too much, and we would just gotten like called copycats for like all of eternity if we did that. So that's unfortunate.
The Clevelanders, the Clevelanders. No, I'm not kidding.
Gosh. Still better than Guardians.
I mean, even the Cleveland Dogs sounds really lit.
Like play off the dog pound, yeah. Like, I like that
the
too.
Cleveland Dogs.
If you want to go with dogs or the Bulldogs, if you want like a specific type of dog, or if you just want to go with dog like DAWG, like
I like it. I like the Cleveland Dogs, the DAWG.
Yeah, I like think that. Playing off of the dog mascot and the dog pound would be a way to do that because
and the helmet could have like a dog. That'd be sick.
Yeah, that's how we brand ourselves, and then we could actually have a logo that wasn't just a helmet. So.
True. Let's go Dogs. Like, let's go Dogs.
Dogs are the Dogs from Cleveland, and then Green Bay, man. Like I don't really know.
I got it. The Green Bay Cheeseheads.
The straight up Cheeseheads.
That offends so many people from Green Bay.
Yeah, I'd have to look a little bit more into like what Green Bay is known for, but like Wisconsin specifically is like I know it's cheese. I know
the cows, the Green Bay cows.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one.
I would say like we could just say that we would have an alternate name. Maybe we could come back to that in a future episode. But we would have an alternate. I would say something along like for the Atlanta, by the way. I have an idea for Atlanta. Wouldn't be Falcons. It'd be the Atlanta what is that? What I have it? I had one earlier. I forget now. Because isn't it Pepsi or Coke down there? I can't remember.
Down in Atlanta is Coke.
Yeah, so like it would be something along with that sort of thing, but I couldn't remember now at the top of my head. But anyways, I would say that we have an idea for the Packers. Just someone come up with it in the comments. What would be your name for the Cleveland Browns, a new name, and then for the Green Bay Packers after you've heard the story, and let us know what you thought the name should be. So yeah, let us know your thoughts. That'd be really appreciated. Also, Josh, thank you for hopping on today. Thank you for, helping me get through my illness because, companions help.
Man. Talking football is great medicine.
Oh, yeah. Great medicine. If you've loved this episode of the podcast and you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. That'll let you see all the new episodes that are coming out. Also, I just got last week recorded a episode of the other podcast with Dr. Jeremy Irvin that will be coming out later this week. Very cool. If you want to know about a new opportunity for teaching, it's really a great opportunity. So stay tuned for that. And if you listening on Spotify or any of the podcasting platforms, make sure you like it, listen to it on the road. Maybe when you're driving to work, pop it in. We're better than, Mike and Mike ever was, obviously. If you don't know who that was, then you had no childhood listening to the radio.
You're too young.
You're too young. You're too young. But anyways, thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed it and hope you guys have a great rest of your week. And until then, we'll see ya.